In this video, I'd like to discuss the importance of focusing on real performance results. When we focus on results, it's going to help us to define the actual results that we want to see. It'll help us to properly evaluate the current performance capability that we possess. It'll help us to reduce the limiting impact of change-resistant cognitive biases. And it'll help us to move our organizations and ourselves forward, whether we're in good times or we're in difficult times. I think that most people would agree that there's a direct relationship between performance and success. But I think we're also seeing a general acceptance of mediocre or average performance at the expense of higher levels of performance that make us more competitive and make us more successful. Economies are in decline. We're seeing organizational growth declining or stagnant. Profitability is down. Customer service is challenging. Business development is declining. And innovation seems to be becoming a word rather than an ongoing activity that organizations employ. The result of poor hiring practices, whether it's personnel or involved or the processes, are staffing our organizations with poor performing managers and staff. So we should not expect anything different than poor performance results. Succession planning, whether it's even in place or not, is not giving us the suitable replacements internally for people to assume senior positions when people retire or move on to other things. We're seeing leadership development programs that perhaps educate people about leadership, but they're not really helping them to integrate what they learn into their specific work environments. And I think generally we're seeing performance decline because people are required to do more with fewer resources, and therefore this is causing enormous stress in the workplace. The global economy has changed. It changed a long time ago, but I don't think that our thinking has really changed along with it. So I think that one approach to help us to move forward is to regain our focus on what really matters, and that's actual performance results. At CAES, there's a number of services that we provide, and they're related to performance. And we will typically use this type of formula in pretty well everything that we do. It's very straightforward. What we want to do is first determine the desired results that we would like to experience and within specific outcome or time frames. So what are the outcomes that you want to experience, and when do you want to experience them? Then it's very important to properly and honestly evaluate our current performance capabilities. When we do that, we can identify the gap that exists between our actual performance and the performance that we would like to see. And when we identify the gap, that's going to enable us to find ways to reduce the gaps, either by upgrading personnel, upgrading processes, whatever it is that's going to allow us to take or enable us to take our actual performance to higher desired levels. Gap reduction is a change, and so we need to have acceptance of change, and this also requires the participants in the organization to commit to the necessary effort that's going to bring that change about. And it also requires that the individuals and the organization maintain a level of accountability and require accountability for any of the gap-reducing initiatives that are employed. You can see how this applies to all sorts of situations. I mean, even from an individual performance standpoint, if we want to enhance the performance of a person, what do we want to see? When do we want to see it? Where are they currently, and what are the things that we can do to help them move forward? Similarly, from a leadership development program, what do we want to see our leaders doing? How do we want to see them performing? What is our current leadership capability? And what are the specific developmental programs that will help them to get from one to the other? From a hiring perspective, it's how do we, is our hiring process currently giving us the results that we want to see? If not, what are the things that we can do in changes to approaches or personnel that is going to help us to get what we want to see? Because certainly if we're not hiring high-performing people, again, we're not going to see the results that we want to see. A good example of that is from our experience, starting out as recruiters. We still do recruiting today, but along with a number of other performance-related services. But certainly from our perspective, we always identified the desired results from the outset. So one of the things that we would do is once the contracts are signed and all of that, we would meet with the hiring manager, the person that the candidate, the successful candidate would report to. And we would start with a very simple question. In a year or 2 years, whatever time frame, what are the results that this person has achieved that makes you happy? So we identify that result. It's not just hiring somebody to fill the role. We identify that result that this person will accomplish. And once they say, well, we want to see this and this from the successful person, and then I would say, well, okay, what are the various tasks that this person is going to have to perform to achieve those results? And we would identify a number of series of tasks that would be important. And then I would say, okay, well, what would be the technical characteristics that they would need to have in order to successfully complete these tasks? So what would be the education, what would be the specific technical knowledge, and what would be the industry experience that would enable them to be successful at completing these tasks? And so we would go through all of that. But since we know that performance to be sustained over time requires both a technical a match to the requirements of the role and a non-technical match to the role, we need to go through a series of non-technical questions with the hiring manager as well. And sometimes they're not as familiar with it, so we would lead them through it. And we have a number of categories that we would address, within which there's a number of characteristics that are important to performance. So we would ask questions about cognitive capability and thinking preferences, motivation, concentration preferences, productivity traits, communication skills, interpersonal skills, emotional intelligence, all of these non-technical skills. And then we would compare those requirements in addition to the technical skills to the specific requirements of the role, the manager, the organizational culture, and the team that the person's going to be working with. And that enables us to create a performance profile that we would then be able to compare the manager or to the candidates to. So we interview the manager. We don't say, well, we're going to pass judgment on your managerial approach, but because we know that people come and go on the basis of management, we would interview them and understand their approaches and preferences, and we would also sometimes interview the team, and we would also get a handle, a feeling for the overall organizational culture, because all of this is important to overall performance. And once we do that, then we have, our performance model, that is the desired results that we want to see. Now, in that case, we're not looking to take our candidates, which are the actual results, and increasing their performance in order to fit them in the job. In that case, the actual is the same as the desired. So either the candidate has what they require, or they don't, and we're only going to be interested in people who have what's required. And then if you think of it from a career development perspective, for those of you who are looking at taking your career, to a next level, what are the desired characteristics that next level would be, and when do you want to move your career forward? What's the outcome that you want to see, and what's the time frame that you want to see it happen? But then you need to be honest about where you are. I mean, do you have the performance characteristics or the potential to perform at that new level? And then what are the things that you need to do to move yourself from where you are today to where you want to go? So what would be the gap reduction processes that you need to go through, whether it's in enhancing your performance or enhancing your ability to find that next level career? So anyways, when we talk about the importance of performance, and hopefully people would agree with me on that, we would then say, well, why aren't more people focused on actually achieving performance results? And I think there's a number of reasons. One is that some people just don't care about performance. believe it or not. Another is I think that sometimes people don't really define the performance results that they want to see, and they don't hold to specific time frames. As well, a lot of times people assume that they're better performers than they actually are, and so they accept the performance levels that they're currently experiencing. And this is where both conscious and subconscious cognitive biases can come in and influence how we're perceiving these things. These biases can alter our judgment or our perceptions about performance, and they can lead us to be more acceptant and make excuses when we experience substandard or the performance that's below what we really wanted to see. There's all sorts of cognitive biases, and we're all influenced by them. But specific to this discussion, there's a few that I think that are of value. The first being the status quo bias. And in this bias, what happens is that sometimes people think that despite the fact they're not getting results with what they're currently doing, that an alternative would actually give them worse results. So they're reluctant to make a change. The confirmation bias comes to play, where sometimes we like to think that when people agree with us that we're right. It confirms our opinion, even though what we're right about isn't giving us, or what we think we're right about isn't giving us the results that we want to see. The in-group bias can influence us to think that members of our group all agree with us and we think in a certain way, and therefore we know better than people outside of our group. And so this can cause us to be reluctant to accept advice or input from people who aren't within our specific group. And so think about an organization. That could be considered a group that we think that all of the right answers are on the inside, despite the fact that we're not getting the results that we want. So these biases can, again, impact our ability to see the need for change and then to actually embrace change. And so how do we overcome them? Well, the first thing is to be aware that they're there. But the second thing is that I think by focusing on desired results and maintaining that focus, it minimizes the impact of these biases. So if we say, well, this is the desired result that we want to see in this outcome, and we don't allow any gray zone, either we get them or we don't, and then having a determination to continually move forward towards these, it stops us from justifying and making excuses. So did we get the result, yes or no? No. Okay. So what is it in our processes and our people that caused us to not get the result that we wanted to see? And let's go back and change it. By doing this, then, what we're doing is effectively creating a growth mindset that we always want to improve. We don't want to accept and maintain a fixed mindset that says, well, there's nothing we can do about it anyways. There's no sense in changing. So the growth mindset keeps us moving forward, and it creates a developmental attitude where we say we are always looking to develop the skill sets or develop the processes to keep moving from our current results to even better results. And what this does is create a level of organizational positivity that when we see at least a movement, even if we don't get those results immediately, we see a movement towards them, everybody gets enthusiastic, and therefore that goes throughout the organizational processes, the hiring practices, the leadership and management development, the performance enhancement programs, retention programs. Everything seems to start to make sense and take on an enhancement life of its own. At the end of the day, what happens is that instead of having a downward performance spiral or a flat, which is more common, a flat performance landscape, what we see is an upward spiral that keeps moving forward. And as a result of that, when we're doing that and other organizations or people are not, we're outcompeting them. So we're always getting better at what we're doing. We're becoming more competitive, and those who don't are left behind. One common characteristic of top performing organizations and individuals is that they outcompete their competitors. And so based on this formula, they're very interested in either specific or general desired performance outcomes in specific times. So they set their goals and they set about achieving them. They're also very open to understanding both their performance strengths and weaknesses. So they're not shy about that. They don't worry about protecting themselves. They want to know what they need to do to move from here to here. And they're very open to change and ongoing development. They're willing to put the effort to change. It's not enough to know that this is the change that you need to do, but they're very willing to put the effort, and they hold themselves and the people around them accountable for putting in the effort and for reducing those gaps. The whole process, in effect, reduces the impact of the biases that they hold, just like anybody else, because they're always moving forward and they just don't settle for results that are less than what they desire. So if I were to sum up, if you want to see more organizational or individual or team success, the basic formula that I think would help you is identify the desired results and specific outcomes that you want to experience. Be honest about and fully evaluate your actual performance capabilities and be open to finding out ways that you can enhance your performance. Identify the gaps between the two. Be open to the change that comes about with reducing those gaps. Take on a constant developmental mentality. Put in the effort. Hold yourself accountable and hold the people around you accountable. And I'm sure if you keep moving forward with this type of an approach, you'll see the success that you're desiring to see. So thank you very much for listening. Appreciate you spending your time with me.